My husband 30s and I 30s female have a toddler son together, Max. Max is a sweet kid but has difficulty in unfamiliar situations and can easily get overstimulated. A little while ago, my husband was on a work trip across the country while I was at home with Max. I got a call one morning from his manager informing me that my husband had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. He couldn't tell me much but said although he was stable it didn't look good and that I should come as soon as I could. I freaked out. I booked a ticket for myself because it would be almost impossible to travel with Max and I could barely afford the last-minute ticket. I called my mom, who lived a few hours away, and asked her to come to watch Max while I was away. At this point, I needed someone to watch Max for the time it would take for my mom to arrive so I could make my flight. Looking back, I probably could have handled the logistics better than this, but I was hysterical and was just doing things as I thought of them. I called 3 friends, 1 didn't answer and 2 couldn't help. Luckily, we live close to my brother and sister-in-law, who has a daughter, nearly adult, Sarah, so we're very close to them. Finally, Sarah answered the door and said her parents were out. I explained the situation and asked if she'd watch Max for a couple of hours until my mum came. I should note that Sarah babysits for a few local families and obviously charges them for her services. We have never asked Sarah to babysit before. She showed some concern for my husband, and when I asked her again, she said something along the lines of, "Well, you'll pay me, right? I usually charge X." I stared at her for a moment, not expecting that response, and then my friend, who didn't answer, called me back and said of course she'd watch Max. So I took Max and left without saying anything to my niece. I coordinated with my friend and mom, then flew to see my husband. He ended up needing surgery but is making a full recovery. A few days after he could fly home, we had dinner with my brother and sister-in-law. We talked about the accident and I mentioned that I'd asked Sarah to watch Max. I also noted that I was slightly upset that she brought up payment. My brother was surprised and said he would talk to her as that's not an appropriate reaction. My sister-in-law interjected and said she was proud of Sarah for advocating for herself. She and I argued, and she said that I was entitled to be surprised that Sarah asked for money. To be clear, if I asked Sarah to babysit under normal circumstances, I would expect to pay her. It was unsettling that Sarah would bring up payment while, for all I knew, my husband was dying in a hospital on the other side of the country. I mean, it would have been more empathetic to bring up the topic of payment after I returned and confirm my husband was okay. My sister-in-law is still cold with me and so is my niece. Am I the idiot for getting upset? Everyone's the idiot here. Sarah is a teenager. All she did was ask for payment for babysitting. Socially flawless? No, but again, teenager. People, including in emergencies, will pull crap like, "You should have mentioned it beforehand," when someone asks to be paid after the fact. You are the idiot. You were upset and worried and didn't answer, then went about your business. Your responsibility is to find childcare for your child, even in an emergency, including paying for it when needed. I understand why you reacted that way in the heat of the moment, but to continue to bear a grudge for a teen negotiating the terms of a labour agreement is unreasonable. Not the idiot. My aunt refused to babysit my brother and I when our dad was possibly dying. This was 20 years ago. My mom's relationship with her has never recovered. The niece needs to learn the time and place to advocate for herself. People say we don't owe others anything, but you do. You owe them empathy if you expect to be part of a family unit. Do you mean people behaving as if they were in a civilized society, where you do help others just because it's the right thing to do? That is missing more and more. Yes, you advocate for yourself when someone mistreats you. However, being asked to help family in an emergency is not being mistreated. It's part of being in a functioning family unit. Alternate universe. OP's husband tragically passes away. Her niece, "So about my pay, I charged $25 an hour and it took Grandma 3 hours to get here. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can't afford to incur any losses. I've got school supplies to buy, you know." It was an emergency, a one-off thing, and the kid is family, for God's sake. Your niece sadly lacks empathy and decency, as does your sister-in-law. I'll bet had she agreed, you'd have done something nice for her upon your return. Glad your husband will be okay. I'm a mother of a teen daughter, Kelly. Her bio dad left when she was 4. It's complicated, but despite him being away, he still spent money or had his family help from time to time. I still struggled to raise her until I met my now husband, Christopher. Christopher is like a dad to Kelly. He's the only father figure she had. However, I found out that she's reconnected with her bio dad through his family, his mother, which I wasn't happy about but didn't make a fuss about. Then she started mentioning him often, visiting him while cancelling plans to hang out with us, etc. Her justification is that her dad is sick and might be terminal. I say it might be because she's a child and may not know what it means, so she sees him at his friend's house where he's staying now. Christopher and I were planning her birthday party at our house. Kelly told me she'd like to have her bio dad come over to celebrate since he may not be able to be around next year. Christopher said no immediately. He said he wouldn't let that man come into his house, which made Kelly cry, saying they were robbing her of the last chance to make memories with her dad after finally finding him again. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable having him come to the house and be in the same room as him. Her stepsister said that Christopher and I were overreacting and that Kelly wanted her dad to participate in her birthday so badly. So Christopher left the house, and I snapped at Kelly and threatened to cancel the whole thing. Later, when we calmed down, I suggested she goes to celebrate with him, but she said her friends and their parents wouldn't be able to attend. She also said he couldn't throw the party since he was sick. We had another argument, and she started ignoring Christopher and me while staying in her room. She's saying she won't forgive me if I let her dad miss what could be her last birthday with him. Am I being unreasonable, or is she? You are the idiot. This isn't about you. Your daughter has reconnected with her dad and wants him in her life for as long as he's alive, which is not very long at all. I understand you have resentment against him, but he, by your account, helped with money throughout your daughter's life. If this is the hill you want to die on, be prepared for your relationship with your daughter to take a massive dive. Also, she's not a toddler and does know what terminal means. Would you still feel the same way if he weren't terminal but just the guy who left his kid going years without contact and providing the bare minimum, if that, financial support? Illness doesn't change the core of a person. The only difference is it pushes people to try to get forgiveness before death in some hope of getting absolution for their transgressions. Basically, it's all well and good he wants to reconnect on the emotional side, but what about the rest of it? Not the idiot, OP. You're well within your rights to feel uncomfortable and resentful around him, and not want him in your home. But this is a young adult, not a child. Also, she has every right to reconnect with her dad, and you, OP, have zero right to be upset about it. I say this because it comes across this is the thing you have a problem with, not so much the birthday, but the reconnecting in general. OP, you don't have to like the guy. Heck, you don't even have to speak to him. But it would behoove you to be the bigger person here. My sister and I aren't best friends, but we have a pretty good relationship. Good enough that when she got engaged, I assumed I would either be a maid of honor or a bridesmaid. She didn't ask me, despite having a bridal party of 10, but I didn't say anything even though I was a little hurt. I get that it was her wedding and that I wasn't entitled to be in her wedding party, and I eventually got over it. A little afterward, my best friend got engaged and asked me to be maid of honor, and I happily dived into the responsibility, and it's been a lot of fun for the both of us. I've already been able to plan and execute a lot, making the experience fun for my friend and less stressful. On to the issue. My sister's maid of honor honestly dropped the ball. I know I'm going to be biased, but I've received complaints from family members and other friends. She hasn't put any effort into helping my sister with her wedding, didn't plan anything, never responds to my sister's messages, and generally isn't interested. None of my sister's other bridesmaids are stepping up either. They all have a reason for why they can't spend more time on my sis's wedding. My sister recently approached me to plan everything for her: bridal shower, bachelorette, and the actual wedding. She wants me to give her the experience I've given my friend. I was slightly offended because she only asked me after seeing what a great job I did for someone else. But she's my sister, so I told her I'd be willing to help if she made me a bridesmaid. It's the least she could do, and it would make me feel less like an errand girl and part of the wedding. She refused and said I'd make the numbers off and that I didn't have the look she was trying to accomplish, which offended me even more. Like, at this point, I'm just angry, so I said, fine, I don't have to be part of the wedding, but she needs to hire me as a wedding planner because I'm not doing this for free. It takes a huge time commitment to do all of this work. She cried to mom and dad now, and they all call me an idiot because I should do it as a sister, but she's asking me to do hours of work for free, which I feel isn't fair. Now my family is saying I'm ruining her special day by being selfish and making it all about me, so I'm starting to doubt myself. Am I the idiot? Holy entitled princess, Batman! Your sister refused to give you a spot of honor at her wedding, insulted your look, and then cried to mommy and daddy because you're not helping her? How is she even old enough to get married? The fact that your parents are siding with her after she said you didn't fit the look is straight up ghoulish. You are not the idiot. Unrelated to whether you're a bridesmaid or not, that's too much work to expect, demand, or coax out of someone. Let her figure something else out and enjoy not having any responsibility as a guest. And honestly, I would probably debate even going to the wedding based on the family's behaviour. My brain exploded at "didn't have the look," so what's left of it says, "Your sister sounds very superficial and snobby. Maybe that explains why nobody is falling over themselves to help her. She's probably already gone full bridezilla and your parents are enabling her by getting involved. Or she doesn't surround herself with quality friends, only friends who have the look." Agreed. Notice the parents just criticised and called OP an idiot. Why aren't they helping the golden child do the planning? OP is the only one that can do this. OP doesn't help and probably even skips the wedding. They will try to keep pulling you in. You're already doing one wedding, that's enough. If she doesn't even have the brains to put you in her wedding because she's trying for some stupid look, she deserves what she gets. I'm 29 and my husband is 34. We have an infant daughter. I want to become a veggie mainly for environmental reasons. I've been considering doing this for some time as meat production has a hugely negative effect. Having our daughter has made me a bit more eco-conscious as I'm afraid of the world she'll live in the future. I've been trying to reduce the meat in my diet for some time. My husband doesn't want to do this and complains whenever I cook a meatless meal. I'm a stay-at-home mom and cook almost all of our meals. I've told him I don't want to cook meat anymore and that if he wants to eat it, he can cook it himself, and that he's lucky I'm cooking for him every day whatever I cook. However, he says I should also at least cook meat and add this to the meal for him. He says I can't force him to change his diet and eat less meat, but I say that I'm not, as he can still cook himself meat. He says it's unfair on him to force this major lifestyle change on him, and he thinks I'm being hypocritical and petty, not cooking meat anymore when I've eaten it all my life. He thinks it's silly for me not to cook meat for him as he's going to do it later, as I'm just saving him from cooking meat, and the amount of meat cooked will be the same. So he thinks the only result in this is me not doing something nice for him. But I think doing that would be a massive inconvenience for me, and also it defeats the purpose of me becoming a veggie in the first place. So I do understand his point of view. He's also unhappy that I plan to cook veggie meals for our daughter and thinks it's unfair to force her into being a vegetarian. But again, I don't think I am, as I don't plan on stopping her from eating meat in school, etc. What do you think about this? You are the idiot. You're the stay-at-home parent and you cook most of the meals. That's the setup that you and your husband have agreed to. So suddenly telling him he needs to cook his meals or go vegetarian is not reasonable. You're either passing off a duty that you used to do, cooking his meals, onto him, without any discussion or making him vegetarian with you. You should care about him as much as you care about the earth. And your daughter has two parents. Both of you have a say in the diet and mentality she's raised. So raising your daughter vegetarian isn't your decision alone and is entirely unfair to your daughter. What if your husband says, "I make all the money, don't buy any food I don't approve of"? Do you think you would be an idiot in that situation? Not the idiot. This is a division of labour problem of compromise. It can only be decided if we know 100% of how you and your husband contribute to the relationship. However, you should 100% be able not to cook meat. I would still buy it for him. Maybe this means you do some chore of his as a trade, but is he even doing anything besides working? So far, your husband is an idiot for insisting on meat meals and acting like a baby when he sees some veggies, instead of appreciating a warm meal on the table for him. Agreed. He's not going to become sick because of not eating less meat. Quite the opposite. He's not allergic to vegetarian food. He can still buy meat himself and eat anything he wants. You're also not his maid, OP. Why do his wants come out on top of yours? My brother passed away when his only child, female teen, was 1 year old. I know we should have been more involved in her life, but since we live in different cities, we didn't have much contact with her, especially because she's shy and doesn't like talking on the phone. However, a few months ago, her mom called and asked for our help since she was pregnant again, her fourth child, and said it was a tough pregnancy and asked if we would help her and take our niece for a while, and we agreed. So she's been staying with me and my siblings and only goes home a few days each month. The problem is that while she misses her mom and siblings and wants to go home, she comes back upset every time she goes home. I asked her what it was, and it was always about how her mom treated her compared to her siblings. The baby has been born for a few weeks and it's only got worse for my niece. So I suggested we keep our niece with us and made some excuses about how I don't want her to change school and told her mom it's probably better so that she can focus on the new baby. And she agreed, and we had an agreement that she has to go home for Christmas. The problem is, I don't want to send her home for Christmas. I know she'll miss her siblings, but I don't want her to end up upset again, and from what I've heard, her last Christmases weren't good either. So I made a suggestion she couldn't resist. I told her if she stayed for Christmas, we'll buy her a gaming system of her choice. She agreed to stay. Her mom has been calling and texting my siblings and me, calling us all idiots. So she wanted to go home, her family wanted to go home, and you bribed her to stay with you over Christmas for a gaming system? You are the idiot for bribing her, but her mom is in a bad environment. Have you tried to talk with mom to remedy this? Ultimately, a teen is old enough to decide for herself, but it's incredibly immature of you to bribe her into staying away from family. You're very vague about her mistreatment. For all we know, she's upset that there's a new baby at home and the attention is less on her. That's normal and not mistreatment. If something unsafe is happening, go through the courts and get legal physical custody and guardianship. If you keep her without permission, her mum could call the cops on you. Don't bribe her to stay. Figure out what's going on and be an adult about how you handle it. Not the idiot. Having been in the situation myself, I only wanted to go home because I continuously held on to hope that seeing me after X amount of time would change the way I was treated. It didn't. Oh, there were hugs and smiles the first few minutes, for show in my opinion, but as soon as the initial welcome home was over, I was the maid and the punching bag. Thank you for caring about this young lady who I feel needs a strong support system, and you're doing all you can to support her. I wish her the best.